Hi, I'm Dr. Johnny. Thanks for joining me today. Great video in store about the neck. And I know there's a lot of questions about the neck. We have a lot of options out there, from radio frequency, high frequency ultrasound. Today we're talking about TechNeck and how to tighten the skin up. And those are heating devices. A lot of people will say, hey, I was recommended a laser service or a laser device. I think it's a misnomer a little bit. Lasers are mainly going to be, there are some skin tightenings, 1080, and people use different wavelengths like that for skin tightening, but in general, they're meaning RF or high frequency ultrasound. There's injectables where we can use combinations of, say, collagen stimulators, a little more dangerous in terms of nodule formation. And when you think about the neck, consider when you're going to get it injected with something, if a nodule, lump, or bump forms, it's not something that most people want to ignore. And so you have to think about risks. And a lot of people are asking me about risks of different procedure. What's safe? Risk is something that you have to decide for with yourself, with a conversation with your provider of what you're willing to tolerate. Everything has a risk. There's a risk with me doing this video here. Hopefully it's a little safer. I'm indoors, but saying something wrong, offending, all kinds of different risks we take every day. With fillers, with any time you enter the skin with anything, heat, lasers, light sources, injections, neuromodulator, nothing is safe. There's always a risk and reward profile. And it's going to be specific to the specific person. So some people aren't on aspirin, some people never get nodules, bumps, lumps, all kinds of different reasons. But I'm going to talk about one treatment today for the neck to tighten the skin. I'm going to show you PDO threads placed in the neck. It works to build collagen. And at the end, I'm going to show you a slide that shows the collagen building, because I know a lot of people don't believe in threads, or they're told they shouldn't get threads, and threads isn't a facelift, and threads are all created differently. And I went through smooth, I went through twist, we have barbed, and we now have molded, even a double cut molded type of thread, the Barb 5 now. They're always getting better, but understand a thread lift, a thread treatment, whatever you want to call it, isn't the same. It isn't equal in every clinic and by everyone's hands. Depth is important. As we look at someone being treated today, I'm going to take you through a little bit of what goes into thinking about it. So definitely in the comment sections, we'll continue the discussion, and definitely watch my other videos on different topics of all the different types of threads. But the neck, a lot of people come in for. There's so many different treatments, and I'll tell you, one of my favorite, one of the quickest treatments that can be done. There are some downfalls. I'll kind of give you a window into what I'm looking for. But in general, it's something that a lot of people can do. They like the results, and they don't have to take medication. They don't have to be put half asleep or anything like that. So you'll see no anesthetics used in the treatment we do today. So let's get started with this Raji's Quick Clip on the neck, TechNeck, loose skin, big driver to practices in 3 seconds. So if we look here, here's a pattern. You can see by the different colors of the hubs, I'm using different threads in different areas. I used longer ones above the jawline because of the anatomy and the structures up there. And in the lower face, just technically, a lot of times in the top of the neck and lower neck, we'll use shorter ones. And if we want to mesh, like up here, we can add slightly shorter ones just to get rid of a few lines. We can cross the area, we can put it in the line, and we might want to mesh. Keep in mind, right above the last one I put in, there's structures like the parotid duct. I do prefer needles personally. It's just easier for me to use. A lot of my patients have had Sculptra, Bellafill, collagen stimulators, and I can put them more directly where I want. There are cannulas. Many people love the cannulas. Everyone talks about threads, and they might say, hey, I didn't like my thread lift, or my threads did this, my threads did that. See what I'm doing here? I'm looking at the skin, I'm assessing it, I'm placing it in the regions. But you can see the thread traverse and you can see the outline of the thread. People get scared by that, but keeping in mind, watch this one traverse here. You'll be able to actually see it glide through the skin, and look what the sponge does. And getting that depth, this, I do it fairly quickly. I've done thousands, okay? But a lot of times, and this is a 1.5 inch per se, but there's 2.5 inch. When we're putting in longer ones, there's 3.5, 4 inches. And keeping the same plane is important. And when people say and talk about the results that they had, if it's in the fat layer, you're not going to see much. That's just the way it is. For barbs and molded, of course, we have osteocutaneous ligaments. These are for meshing, and at the end of this video, I'm going to show you how the collagen's produced in a slide. We'll take a look at that. But you can see the depth is ultimately important. And here's a longer one. You'll see the traction hand is important. You never touch the metal. You want to cleanse the face carefully. But keep in mind, when you're putting them in the neck, you know when people get angry or they have high blood pressure, you see all those lines in the neck from the large vessels. You don't want to be putting a thread through larger vessels. You don't want to be anywhere around them. And you'll see people talk about it, and it can be a disaster. So know, for instance, where the parotid duct is. This area where this one's being placed is, there's a large facial artery that comes up in front of the masseter. People don't know that. You go through that, you're going to be concerned, you're going to be scared, you're going to get a large hematoma or worse. So yes, they're superficial, but you still have to know the anatomy. I wanted you to see what actually happens when you put threads in on a microscopic level. And it might be boring to some people, but understand, we got to know what we're doing. So when people say, like Sculptra, we're producing mainly type 1 collagen. That's the collagen that's going to give glow, it's going to give support, it's going to give structure and help build elastin. The same thing is with threads, and you just saw me put a few threads in. You can triple that number and you'd be about right in terms of the number of threads. I use pretty much zero anesthesia. You can use some topical. A lot of people ask me, hey, I want to be put to sleep. Can you put me to sleep for that? Keep in mind, when we talk about risk, do you want your risk elevated to that level of general anesthesia? So you can see it's very tolerated very well. And the thing about it is, yes, if you're in that clinic for 45 minutes getting needles all over your face, not good. But if you're a provider who does them a lot, they're flying through those threads. They're moving very quickly. And a lot of the pain fibers are where? On the outside of the skin. So time, being direct, putting pressure properly, using the threads, and really knowing anatomy. I can't stress it enough. There's aberrancy in anatomy. And I know there's a lot of home gamers and do-it-yourselfers. Well, when things go wrong, trust me, we get the phone calls. So a good knowledge of anatomy will keep you out. But let's have out of trouble. But let's go in and let's look at what it looks like when a thread goes into the skin from a collagen production level. Okay, so if you look here, this first picture is showing us 2 threads right here. Now you see it's white in the middle. The threads are gone, okay? If we blow that picture up and we look over here, right here, where it's white in the middle, that's exactly where the thread was. Now these here are PDO, okay? There's also PCL and PLLA that we talk about. If you look here, you can see that's where the thread was. It's totally gone, okay, in the center. But you see the red area right here, okay? Let's get that a little more clear here. So if we remove that and we look at the darker red area, okay, that's type 1 collagen. Type 1 collagen is what we want to help support the skin. You can see what produces that, and you can see within this stain here, without getting into details, you got lymphocytes, histiocytes, eosinophils, and a bit of fibrosis. People get scared of that word fibrosis, and they're like, oh, it produces scar tissue. It's a complex discussion beyond this, but suffice it to say, type 1 collagen is what we're looking for to be produced. And here's the dermal layer, and you can see it up here. And then look at the thread, and then when we blow it up here, right here. So as we put threads in, we get more and more collagen. Now, if we put Sculptra in, or Plasma Sculpt, we get a lot of that red dark area, okay? But when people ask, or they're wondering about results with threads, here was one thread and here's a second. Imagine if you put a third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, 9, 10, you're gonna get a lot more collagen production. So consider that when you're talking about results of threads, when you're wondering what do threads do. Instead of going watch my video on PDO liquid, instead of going in as a liquid, instead of going in as Plasma Sculpt, which is a water where you can blank, plasma eyes, plasma lip, plasma brow, okay? This is going in as a thread. There's positives to it and negatives. You can't blanket an area like we talked about blanketing the fat pads, but you get a nice meshing effect. And that meshing effect is pretty amazing because what happens is there's some structure to it. When you smile, you have accordion lines or lines around here. When you mesh that, you're now providing support in that area. So understanding anatomy, using enough threads, using the right amount of threads, putting them in the right layer, plus, it all goes in to getting a beautiful result in the neck or otherwise, in this case, with PDO threads. And look at my other videos to see why do I choose PDO a lot of times over PCL, polycaprolactone, and PLLA, poly-L, the L isomer of lactic acid, which all do exist and have other functions as well. Thanks for joining me here. Hope you enjoyed this video on neck tightening with threads. Well, if you stay tuned, we have a lot more coming, and we're analyzing faces, talking about how you can keep your skin and body beautiful, healthy, and vibrant for longer.